Good evening, traders. It's a Sunday night. I'll be doing a trade review. One of the trades that we put up as a potential trade setup earlier in the week on the Aussie against the US dollar. And I've had a lot of questions. People saying, oh, what were the reasons why you chose it? Was it news related? Was it a technical setup? Those types of things. And in the truth is, it was a bit of both. I combined the news items, the fundamentals and technicals, and try to get trades together that match a whole variety of criteria for my entry. So I thought I'd go through and show you those indicators and so forth this evening. And also we'll have a look at what do you do once you're in the trade? How do you manage it? Keeping in mind, there will be more news events coming out. So this Aussie against the US dollar, I think, is a perfect example. So I'll share you the screen. So it's one where I said it was a potential short on the Aussie against the US dollar. And this occurred on LinkedIn. I'll show you the LinkedIn page where it went up here saying a potential sell on the Aussie against the US dollar. And it was after employment data was released. We had employment data that came out. It was pretty negative and it was well above, it was supposed to be pretty bad, but it turned out to be really, really bad. So we'll go through that as well. And then we'll keep in mind that there's always two sides of a trade. So we've got the Aussie dollar, and then we've also got the US dollar on the other side. So what happens when you're in a trade and then maybe news is coming out on the other currency? So let's run through that right now. So I'm going to bring up and share with you the pivots charting package that I'm using to actually isolate potential opportunities and use the indicators as a guide. So let's have a look. I'll share that with you now. So here's a chart of the Aussie against the US dollar. And as you can see, if you use a simple, maybe a MACD indicator, you can see that it's in a downtrend. The MACD has crossed down. I've put in a level of support that's recently been broken as well. And you can see here that the trend is down. So I'll go and check the daily. Now, when I look at the daily, I will see that the daily has just crossed down as well. So a few days ago, and this was right around the time we were looking at this as a potential setup, saying, okay, the weekly trend is down and the daily trend is down. So I was going back, and keep in mind that price was coming down and hitting that black line there, that 73.43 or daily support. It kept banging into it. It was having trouble getting below it. And I was, along with other traders, obviously, looking for a break, and it occurred. So we'll leave that there. And you see all of a sudden we get this break. Okay, so it's held underneath there, and that would make sense because the MACD crossed down as well. So the trends are down. The overall trend is pretty weak as well. So I want to be a seller. So what I'm going to do is look for the ideal spot where I want to be a seller. Okay, but before I can do that, I need to go and have a look at the news. So what news is coming out on both the Aussie and the US dollar? So for that week, I'll just share back with you that screen. So we'll just go back in here and we'll move it over, and you'll have a look at what occurred sort of September 16 onwards. The big news, of course, was the Aussie, on the Aussie side, was this employment change, which I discussed earlier. Turned out to be a lot worse. Believe it or not, though, even though a lot more people lost jobs on the previous month, the unemployment rate improved. And look, that can happen, and it comes down to the way the economists are calculating their data, you might say. So, for example, even though lots of people have lost their jobs way more than expected, almost double, okay, than expected, how can the unemployment rate actually improve? So the way that works is you have a situation where once you've lost your job, you're counted as unemployed, but then after a period of time, you become even though you mightn't have a job, you become no longer participating in the workforce. So they don't count you as unemployed. And because it's a lagging indicator and it can take time, okay, that type of thing can end up with situations like this. So it'll be interesting to see moving forward. So they sort of say, I don't know, if you can't find a job after, say, 6 months, oh, that's it, you've just retired or something like that. Anyway, let's go back. So we had this unemployment rate come out, but then later that night, we also had retail sales coming out on the US side, and we also had Philly Fed manufacturing and unemployment claims all coming out on the US side. So let's just go in and have a look. So I'm just going to share that with you now. Let's have a look at the charts again. So I'm looking to be a seller, and I'm going to go into I've got my area up here where I would like to say this support, if that becomes resistance, all right, I'll just draw that in for you. So if we're breaking down, okay, I ideally want to say, well, I would like to see price go back up, retest that, okay, and that support become resistance, or the floor becomes a roof, continuing therefore the trend going down. Truth is, it may not go up there. It may not go up and retest, but what I'm looking for are low risk, high probability trades. So I'll go in on, say, the 15-minute chart, and I think we'll see what happens here. So let me just bring it right back to where we currently are. And we'll go back to where that employment data came out. So I'll get rid of this line for you because that's just the big version of the one that I just drew, for those of you who are wondering. Okay, so price was hovering around here. I wanted to come back up where this sort of blue rectangle is, yeah? So price was starting to go back up to do a retest. And here's, you see it fails at resistance. It goes up. I even drew in a trend line on the pivot system. If you want to know more about what I'm using here, then our guru trader, Duncan Cooper at ACY, goes through and does webinars and is happy to answer questions and teach people what this all means. So I've drawn in a trend line. It's gone right up to this daily resistance. That data came out negative, okay? So it was up at the right spot where I would have liked to be a seller, but we also got negative data on the employment side. So price obviously started to break down here. So I'm in a position where I'm saying, okay, I'm willing to put a risk of, I'm only risking like 12 or 13 pips because I'm going to put it above the high point after this candle. And I'm going to say to myself, okay, I'm risking 12 or 13 pips. As price goes down, once I get up, say, and this is the question is, what do you do once you're in the trade? So I'm someone who would like price to move down in the right direction, either that or it stops me out. And then I'm in a position to make a decision. Am I going to move my stop to break even or just below it? So I'm in a position where it's very hard to lose from this particular trade. And I'm in a position where I can potentially take some partial profits. So it gives me decisions to make, and then I can do that in line with my strategy. So as price did come down, I was in a position where I did take some partial profits, but I was waiting to see, so I got risk out, but I was waiting to see on this New York Open, you'll see it down there, what that US data was going to be like coming out. Now the US data was not too bad, it was positive. So we had a bit of strength on the US side of the seesaw, and we had weakness on the Aussie side of the seesaw. So we literally saw price continue down. And then once we get down into this pivot area where we're looking at the green pivots, which are sort of suggesting they could be a intraday support level, I will take more profit out of the trade and exit the trade. So I hope this gives you a bit of an insight into the rationale as to why we're choosing and how we're utilizing the fundamentals, the technicals for timing, and then looking also at these news events, okay, which are going to potentially give us a lot of volatility, which we could profit from. All right, thanks everybody. I hope you have a great week.